His family was there, and my friends were there, and the practical machinery of death moved through our apartment and his office, and the civil bureaucracy of Munich with the organized thoroughness of a German administrative system, which in a strange way I was grateful for because it gave me tasks at a time when tasks were the only thing I could do. 2 weeks after the funeral, his lawyer contacted me about the estate. This was expected and routine, and I went to the office and sat across from a man named Herr Brandt, who had a neat desk and a careful manner, and who went through the documents with me systematically. There was the apartment, which was ours jointly, the savings accounts, which I knew about, a pension, investments, standard. Herr Brandt went through everything efficiently and I followed, and then he got to the final item and he paused in a way that was different from his other pauses, and he said, "There is one additional account I should bring to your attention. It has been active for 16 years. I understand you may not have been aware of it." I looked at the document he placed in front of me. A savings account in a Munich bank, in Klaus's name only, holding a balance that was not enormous, but was significant. The transaction history went back 16 years. Regular withdrawals, almost every month, of varying amounts, sometimes 300 euros, sometimes 500, sometimes more, all transferred to the same account in Argentina. Not my account, an account in the name of Cecilia Romero, my sister. I sat very still in Herr Brandt's office for a long moment. He gave me the time. Then I asked him how long he had known about this account. He said Klaus had instructed him to disclose it to me after his death, that the instructions were in a sealed letter that accompanied the estate documents, and that he had followed them precisely. He gave me the letter. I did not read it in his office. I took it home and I sat at the kitchen table that Klaus and I had eaten at for 19 years, the one by the window that looked out at the linden tree that had been there longer than either of us and would be there long after. And I opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages, handwritten, in the careful German of a man who had always thought before he wrote. He had written it 4 years earlier, which meant he had been thinking about this for at least 4 years, carrying the intention of explanation while still being there to explain in person if I had only asked the right question. I did not know then that I had not asked the right question. I did not know there was a question to ask. He explained the account. 16 years earlier, he had discovered, by accident, through a remark my mother made during one of their limited language conversations in Buenos Aires, confirmed later through my sister, that the money I was sending home each month was not enough. Not because I wasn't sending enough, but because my sister Cecilia had, for the past several years, been managing a chronic illness, a kidney condition that required regular medication and periodic treatment, and had not told me because she did not want me to feel responsible and did not want to worry me, and had been managing it with the money available and my mother's help and a quiet determination that was entirely characteristic of her. He had found out and had decided, without telling me, to help, not to tell me, he wrote, because he had thought about it carefully and concluded that if I knew I would take on the responsibility myself, would increase what I was sending, would add to a weight I was already carrying without complaint, and that he did not want me to carry more. He wanted to carry this part. So he had set up the account and had contacted Cecilia directly and had asked her to keep it between them, not to hide something bad, but to protect something good, to protect me from a worry he could address on my behalf without requiring me to hold it. He had been sending money to my sister for 16 years. Every month, quietly, from an account I did not know about, without ever mentioning it or expecting credit for it or making me feel that I owed him anything in return. He wrote, near the end of the letter, in the plain German that he used for the things that mattered most to him, "I am telling you now because you should know, not to be thanked, so that when you think about your family and wonder whether they have been all right, you can know that I was watching over them alongside you, and that you were not doing it alone as you believed." I read the letter 3 times at the kitchen table. Then I called Cecilia. She answered on the second ring. She knew immediately why I was calling. She had been waiting, she told me, since Herr Brandt had confirmed Klaus's death, knowing that the account would surface now. She had cried for Klaus, she said, in a way that surprised her, because she had not fully understood until he was gone how much of a presence he had been in her life despite the distance, despite the language, despite the fact that she had met him in person only 6 times. He had emailed her in a mixture of German and translated Spanish. He had sent her books. He had remembered her birthday every year, unerringly. He had asked about her health with a consistency and a gentleness that she had come to rely on without fully articulating to herself how much it mattered until it stopped. She told me that 3 years ago, when her kidney condition had worsened and she needed a more intensive treatment protocol that her regular savings could not cover, Klaus had arranged to cover it entirely. She said it was the reason she was healthy now, or as healthy as she was. She said she had asked him, during one of their email exchanges, why he was doing all of this without telling me. He had said, in his translated Spanish, "Because Valentina gives everything she has, someone needs to give something for her." I sat with that sentence for a long time. I am still sitting with it, in a way, because it contained something about how Klaus had understood me, and I think understood me more clearly than I had understood myself, that I had not had access to before I read it. I had thought of myself, for 19 years, as someone who was managing her responsibilities well, who had built a life in Munich without losing the thread that connected her to Buenos Aires, who was keeping all the parts of her life in balance. What Klaus had seen, clearly and without judgment, was that the balance was costing me more than I admitted, and that someone needed to be quietly helping with the weight I was carrying on the side that I couldn't see from where I was standing. He had loved me in the most practical way he could find, which was to do something useful about the thing he could see was heavy, and then to say nothing about it because saying something would have changed it, would have made it a transaction or a sacrifice or a debt, and he did not want it to be any of those things. He wanted it to simply be what it was, which was love, expressed in the only language he fully trusted. I went to Buenos Aires 3 months after his death. The first time I had been back since he died. The first time I had been there without him. My mother met me at the airport and held me in the same way she had held me the morning I left in 2002. The same arms, a different weight in them. Cecilia was there, healthy, thin, but healthy, with a new way of holding herself that looked like someone who has been through something difficult and has arrived at the other side of it with more room inside herself than she had before. We sat in my mother's kitchen, the 3 of us, the first evening. The kitchen I had grown up in, smaller than I remembered, exactly the same. My mother made tea the way she always did, loose leaf in a pot, the ritual of it unchanged across 20 years of my absence. And I told them what I had read in the letter, though Cecilia already knew most of it, because my mother did not. I watched my mother's face while I told her. She was still for a long time when I finished. Then she said, in Spanish, I knew he was a good man. I did not know how much. She said it quietly, in the voice she uses when something has moved her more than she wants to show. I stayed for 2 weeks. I walked the San Telmo streets in the February heat, the same summer absurdity I'd left behind in 2002, and I felt the city differently than I had on any of my previous visits, because I was not visiting it alongside Klaus, or in the shadow of the life we were returning to, and because I understood now that the thread between Munich and Buenos Aires had been held for 16 years by 2 sets of hands instead of one, and that one of those sets was gone. I am back in Munich now. The apartment is mine. The linden tree is still outside the window. I have gone back to work, which is the thing that helps most. The immersion in other people's words and the task of carrying meaning from one language into another without losing what makes it true. I have started learning to do something Klaus always did, which is to pay attention to what the people I love need without waiting to be asked, and to find ways to address it that feel like presence rather than performance. I am not as naturally good at this as he was. I am practicing. I have been sending Cecilia a little more each month. She does not need it the way she once did. The treatment is stable, the condition is managed. But I send it because I want her to know I am thinking of her, which is a thing Klaus understood, and I am only now learning to express with the consistency it deserves. She emails me every Sunday. Sometimes long, sometimes just a photograph of something she has seen. A dog on the street, a flower growing through a crack in the sidewalk, a market stall with colors she knows I would like. I write back, "We are building something that should have been there all along, that was there in a way I did not know, through the quiet intermediary of a man who understood that love is most itself when it asks for nothing in return." The last thing Klaus wrote in the letter, the final line before his signature, was this: "I hope the knowing makes you feel less alone than the not knowing. That is all I wanted, for you to know that you were not doing it alone. I was not alone. I was never alone. And somehow, the knowing of that, arriving as it did in the voice of someone I can no longer hear from a letter written in preparation for his absence, meant to be read in exactly the silence I am reading it in, is the most present he has ever felt to me. Some people say everything they need to say in a lifetime. Klaus said everything he needed to say in a letter, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was the whole conversation I did not know we were having,